Hey everyone, it's the Coco Nomad here and back with another video. This one is actually not part of any of the previous playlists or anything. I just wanted to talk about staying in a location and determining what is the right length for you. I have been in Medellin, Colombia now for about 12 months, and it is really outside of what I normally do. I'm starting to feel like Mr. Meeseeks. It's getting a little weird. I'm not used to existing somewhere this long. So I am a little anxious to move on. I know that we're still dealing with the ramifications of the pandemic, and that is global, and there's implications for travel and restrictions. There's a lot of things going on, so this is really not I guess you would classify this as a first world problem. You know, it's not that big of a deal, but I am really, really ready to go. And that is not a knock in any way on my time here in Colombia. It's been great. I've made some new great friends. I've had a really good experience. I'm actually pretty grateful that I was able to hunker down here as opposed to a couple of other places that I may have been that might not have gone as smoothly and may not have been as easy to do. So I'm not complaining in any way, but it's just time to go. Like I typically pick a location for 3 to 6 months, and that's pretty much the max of how long I want to be somewhere at a given time, and I try to plan accordingly. Of course, I may have mentioned before in the previous videos that of course I had this great summer of travel that I had laid out. It was going to be epic, kind of returning to what I was doing in 2016 and 2017 after taking a couple of years and slowing down. I was ready to get back into that really rapid, frequent travel mix for a while, mix it up, see a bunch of new countries, get a bunch of stamps if they're still doing stamps, I don't even know. But I think it is important for every person to determine for themselves, though, what is your travel style? How do you prefer to travel? How long do you want to be in a destination? And it's going to come down to a lot of factors. One, if you're working, it's going to put a bit of responsibility on you to make sure that you can maintain a positive work environment wherever you go and some stability. If you have an employer, teammates, clients, any mix of those things, people are going to expect you to follow through on your obligations, the work and the promises that you make. So you want to make sure you can continue to do that. And that, again, is one of the good things about me being here is that I was able to do that. I was able to maintain a relationship with my clients and continue to push my own personal projects forward as well. Got some super exciting stuff coming forward in that regard as well as a little bit of bittersweetness there as well. Because I mean, it's one of those things where in moving forward and doing the things you want to do, sometimes you have to leave good things behind to do other good things or great things. So and to pursue your dreams. So there's always a trade-off, and it's not always trading something bad for something good. Sometimes it's trading something good for something else good, and you just have to make that decision, and it's tough. But getting back to the main core, if you're planning out your travels, now we have the added requirement of determining what are the rules for testing. I'm seeing a lot of people coming into Colombia now, and they're having issues. They are at various levels of preparation for their COVID-19 test, and it's the 19th. I think it has to be done within the previous 96 hours. I don't think the U.S. has the same restriction, and I'm not sure about Mexico. Now, for me and my personal travel plans, I am headed back to the U.S. briefly, very briefly, and then back to Mexico for a while. And then I'm sort of going to regroup and figure out how I'm going to tackle 2021. The initial plan is to get to East Africa, either starting in Tanzania and sort of working my way around Lake Victoria and all the countries that are adjacent or close by. That's the initial plan, and hopefully I can do that. Still need to do a little bit more research and sort of finalize some travel plans and make sure that that's going to work. But in the interim, just going to enjoy Mexico because I love it. I'm going to get back to either Mexico City or Playa del Carmen or both so I can see all my friends and reconnect with everybody, get some great street food, and just soak up a country that I really, really love being in. So when you make your own choice, you have to decide if it's a temporary or permanent thing. And this is one of the things I tell people because I've had this conversation so many times. People say, well, what place do you like and where should I go? And I'm like, I'm a programmer, so my answer is always going to be, it depends. It's always it depends. There's too many factors that go into deciding what is a good place for you. Some people come here and they don't like it. They don't enjoy it. I've seen people come to Thailand and not enjoy it. I've seen people come to Europe and Spain and Portugal and didn't enjoy it. I've been several places I love personally, but I've seen other people struggle. I had a friend I remember struggling in Mexico, and it's just like you have to decide for yourself what you're looking for, and you need to be clear on that. Like, what kind of place do you want? Do you want the beach? Do you want to live in a big city? Do you want to have access to the arts? Do you want to have a community of expats or people who speak your language to make you feel comfortable? Is that going to be a barrier? Because it's a huge barrier in a lot of places. And I've seen, even for myself, for example, in Lisbon, I love Lisbon, I love Portugal, but I could tell in multiple trips there that there's a layer to that city and to the country as a whole that I just couldn't access until I got better at speaking Portuguese. Because there are lots of people there who are wonderful people that we're just never going to be able to interact with because they don't speak English. And of course, it'd be ridiculous for me to assume that people are going to speak a non-native language just because that's the language that I know. Now, granted, it's not the only language I know, but it doesn't matter. The point is that if you want to really connect with people in a place and really immerse yourself, I think language is a huge component of that. And taking language lessons is a great way to do that. I think language meetups is another great way because you can solve two problems. One, you start learning the language, and two, you meet people who are also either trying to learn the language you speak or just other people who are trying to learn the local language. And usually they're run by native speakers who are incredibly helpful, helping you get better and get more acclimated. So I think that's super important. The other things are like your long-term goals in terms of residency or citizenship. If your goals are to sort of relocate from your home country and go to this new country and start a new life, then you need to be up on all the rules and regs and the process and the things that you need to do. Now, if you're someone like me who just hasn't decided yet after 5 years of just, and I know, I mean, it's just how I am. I'm going to continue to travel. There are places I like to frequent. There are places that I'll return to, Mexico and Colombia being two examples. I'll just continue to revolve in and out. I don't need one of the longer term visas or extensions and things like that because I just typically don't stay that long. 3 months is enough. Usually after 3 months, I'm starting to kind of look for the next place to go or the next city. In terms of Mexico, maybe just the next city, like 3 months in Mexico City and then 3 months in Playa or something like that. But then another country and kind of moving on. And so, but you want to be clear on what that is. And it's okay, and I think this is the most important part, it's okay to not know. Like if you're just starting, or you say you've only been traveling for 18 months or less, and you've been traveling around sort of sampling these different places around the world, and you want to get a just taste of it, it's like, that's perfectly fine. Like there's nothing wrong with trying to figure things out. And I recommend actually that you make multiple visits to a place. And I'll give another example. The first time I went to San Francisco, I think it was 2013 or 2014, I fell in love with it. I was like, okay, I want to move from the East Coast to San Francisco. I had a bunch of friends that started getting jobs and working and migrating, colleagues that were getting jobs at Apple, that worked for some other tech companies out there. And I'm like, well, I should do the same. I'm going to go get a job at Apple, and I'm going to move to San Francisco. The next year, I went back and spent more time, and it was completely different. I realized that the first time it was the novelty of a place that I hadn't seen before. In the second trip there, I started to see like the edges, as it were, of the city, and realizing that I like it, but I don't want to live here. It's like, this is a good place to visit. This is not a place for me to live long-term or permanently. And so I immediately started looking for other places. I've made multiple trips to Denver. Denver's another example where I wouldn't put it in the San Francisco category, whereas I wouldn't live there because I absolutely probably would live in Denver. But I still needed multiple trips to determine whether or not it was the right fit, because the first time you get an impression. The more times you visit or the longer you stay, the better you can get an idea of what it really is like to live there. And that's the other thing. 1, multiple trips. 2, stay longer. A week or two, especially if you're in vacation mode, you're not really looking at the city the same way. Was one of the reasons why I tend to try to do a month minimum. That's one of the great factors or outcomes of that time I spent on that remote year program, was that it was a month and 4 weeks. Gave me a lot of time to like, after the initial weekend of like going to all these spots and partying, doing the rooftop bars, and the second week kind of do it again, and then by the third week kind of like, all right, I did all that. What is this place about? And if you're not doing side trips and just kind of jaunting around to adjacent countries and those things, you get a real opportunity to see what life is like in a location. So it's important to do that to get a realistic view. Where are you shopping? Where are you getting your hair cut or your nails done or your hair done or whatever your basic routine? Do you work out? Where do you work out? Where are the cafes that you like to frequent? You need to learn like what is going to be your new routine, because if you're moving from one place to another, at some point you're going to quote unquote settle, and you're going to want to do these things on a frequent basis. You want to create a sense of home. You want to create this stability there, and you need to start investigating that and do that. So I think it's super duper important that you do it. So I recommend these things that if you're trying to determine how long you should stay in a place, just to review, my basic guidelines is 1 month minimum if it's a country that you're thinking about relocating to. Two, I recommend making multiple visits to that place so that you can see what it's like once the novelty wears off. And three, make sure you're doing the day-to-day things that you would be doing in your home country or wherever you're coming from, and build sort of a sense of normalcy where you're going, so you know this is what life is going to be like. And just be aware of some of those other factors like the local community, people that you can talk to, language, health, your work routine, your ability to do all the things are all going to play into that. Now, I didn't mention if it's something like if you're running your own business. I think there's a lot of overlaps, whether it's a full-time job or running your own business or freelancing, consulting, things like that. But if you were trying to relocate your business, there's a whole nother set of things that you have to worry about in terms of taxes and setting up a business entity and the ability to actually legally run your business from a new location. But that's outside of my that's above my pay grade. I don't really do that. So just I hope this kind of helps though, sort of give you some realistic boundaries of which to set and some guidelines that you can use moving forward in your journey in deciding where you want to be. Thanks for listening, and I will talk to you next time. Cheers.